Hey everyone, I'm just doing a revisit on this particular one by special request by a subscriber. This is for you, Bailey 9x19. This is for you. This bud's for you, as we used to say. Basically, just going to do an overview of the Smith Wesson hybrid with a Gen 3 type lower, like a Glock Gen 3 type lower. How I adapted the Smith & Wesson slide to the lower of a Gen 3 Glock, or a clone Gen 3 Glock lower, or whatever. Anyway, once this is done, this upper will work on any Gen 3 lower. Basically what I had was a surplus or just an SD40VE slide laying around, like a lot of you do, and I decided I'm going to make it convert so it'll function. Would be cool. It would function on a Glock lower. That way I'd have the best of both worlds. One of the inherent horrible things with Smith & Wesson, especially the SD40 line, or the SD line, was the trigger system sucks royally. And I don't know about the 2.0 versions, what they have right now, but I'm sure they didn't overly improve it because they don't want to compete with their, higher end models. That's just a fact. Anyway, that being said, I saw what I could do to improve it, and I'm just going to try to give it a quick breakdown. All right, enough rambling. What we have here is a Dagger lower, Smith & Wesson SD40VE upper. All right, I'm just going to show everybody, show clear first. It is clear, and this is a 40 caliber, by the way. As you can see, it is a Glock magazine. It is clear. It is clear. Okay, we've established clear. We can get rid of all this stuff. Okay, breaks down just like any other regular Glock type pistol would. Pull the trigger, draw it back on the slide. I do have extended slide release things. Before I even get into the slide, because that's where all the work is, the frame fundamentally, as you can see, is all third gen Glock. Okay, this is a Dagger, but I use a lot of Glock parts in it. It all depends on what works. The first thing you're gonna have to do is, the only thing for the frame is you're gonna have to put a 40 caliber. If you're going with 40 caliber, you have to put a Glock 40 caliber ejector in. So ejector swap. You gotta change the ejector. Other than that, your spring combinations are gonna vary. You have to do a balance between the right type of springs that's going to make it function the way you want it to function. But start off with the base, tweak it from there. I'm not going to get too far into it because I could go for hours on that. I used my spring combination on this right here, stock trigger return spring basically, which is all back here. And the, God, I can't even think of it right now. The disc connector. I used a Ghost 3.5 pound disc connector on it right over here. So that was one of the things that I did to balance out my trigger release on it. I believe maybe I have a 4 pound trigger pull on this right now. Anyway, so you can use all the stock stuff. I just tweaked it. Like I said, I don't want to get too deep into that because that's a rabbit hole. But anyway, you can use stock parts, tweak it from there, but you have to use, if you're going to converting a 40 caliber, you got to change your ejector over. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to get too far into it. Let me put this aside. That's personal preference. Okay, here's your slide. The sights don't matter, but I put some big dot sights on it. And that was my personal preference. Other than that, nothing else was under that. The back plate on this right here. What I had to do too with this is I had to actually, there was an angle on these before. It had like a slight angle out, and I had to actually shave some of the back off. And I think I should probably get my other SD40, my actual stock SD40, and I'll put it side by side for you so you can look at exactly what I mean. Okay, I'm going to clear this one. Clear. Now this is a stock SD40. Of course, I have an Apex trigger kit in it, but that's beside the point. All right, you can see right off the bat that in the rear, the profiles are different right here. You see that? To make this not overhang with the back of the slide, because this would have been sitting kind of like this, then you would have had this overhang back here. If you're going to put it on anything other than like a P80 frame. A P80 frame, you wouldn't have to do this, but since I wanted to adapt it to either a Glock frame or a Glock type frame, this was necessary to make this fit correctly. Aesthetically, that is. It's an aesthetic thing. So, we put one on top of the other. You can see right here, bring this up a little closer, butt it up. You can see there's a little difference. See that little difference hanging down right here? There's a lot of meat inside of the slide, and you can see right over here that this rail where the back plate goes into, this is cosmetic, this part. You can shave some of that off and shave it down to get a flatter profile in the back, but be careful, because if you go into this rear rail, then you're not going to have much to hold on your back plate. To me, that was personal preference. It was cosmetic. It's not functional, but if you want something that looks factory, you're going to have to make that adjustment. So, see if I can hold them side by side. See if I can go like that. Okay. Butt them up. See if I can butt them up like this. Okay, that's butted. And you can see the difference in the back. See the overhang here? The important areas, you get something smaller to point with, is where this back plate slides into the groove that's in the back of the back plate to hold everything in. You just have to leave enough meat on there where you just take off the part that's an aesthetic. And also, to achieve a proper back plate fit, I could not use the original back plate. I went on, I think I went on eBay, and I got, and of course, a back plate for an SD40VE, and it was an aluminum one, and it did slope out, and then I had to hand file it down so it would fit the profile. So there's a lot of hand fitting to get that aesthetic. So that wasn't, I put a lot of time into it. So let me put this one back. This is a great pistol too, but, you know, it still has limitations because of the designed-in stupidity that Smith & Wesson decided to do with the trigger group. But let me put that aside. That's not that important right now. Quick breakdown. Let's take this apart. Take out your recoil spring. Stock barrel. Okay, now there's a few areas in here that are going to have to be machined. As you can see, there you go. I think the best way to do this is to get that out of the slide again. This is all off the cuff, people. Okay, come on, get off. Get out of there. Oh, that's why. Helps if you take that off. Okay. Here you go. All right, side-by-side comparison. See if I can get a little bit of a zoom. Let's bring it up like this. Here's your meat and potatoes right here. Right over here, there's a hump. See this hump? That has to be milled flat, like that. And then you have to leave a little bit on the edge. So you mill off part of it, but you have to leave enough meat so when your disconnector rides over it, it'll reset. So basically you get machining in here. And forgive me if I'm not using the correct terminology right now. It's been a long time since I looked at this. But you have to machine out some of this area. You have to leave a reset in this area. Okay? Up front, there's also, let me remove the recoil assembly on this so you can see it better. Okay. There's a little piece right here that has to be machined flush also. So this has to be milled out. The reason why those pieces have to be milled out is it will not ride on the slide. You will not get it on. So you'll see here, it's gone on this slide. Okay, that's better lighting. You see here, this is one that was machined out to go on the Glock style slide. So this was milled out, flat, completely flat. And then this area here, you have to take enough off of the outside. You start on the outside, you get your end mill plumb, and very carefully start taking. If you mess up, you're done. You ruin the slide, and you have to slowly mill out. Of course, you're gonna disassemble the whole slide, and then you're gonna mill off this area right over here until you have it looks like so. Okay, and right over here is where your connector is gonna do your resetting. So that's gonna slide that connector. That little connector right there with the tip of my thumb. The connector right here is going to ride in this channel, and this is where your trigger reset is going to happen. So that connector is going to come back when the slide cycles. It's going to trip right over here. Okay, so that's actually where it's going to disconnect the trigger and trip the striker, for lack of a better term. All right, now the other thing that has to be modified, so we already went over that. So this has to come out flush, like it just isn't there. Flush it up. You can see that. This has got to go. And then back here. Now I did this on a makeshift mill. I didn't have access to any super duper milling machines. So I kind of made my own makeshift mill to do this. And the pistol functions 100%. And then this, like I said, has to be kind of milled out flat until you get enough off where you still have to have that hump, and you have to smooth it out so you don't get any hang-ups. It takes a lot of hand fitting, but this runs perfectly now. That connector comes right over here and does its job. So the connector rides in this rail, it will come back. You have to leave enough meat on it. If you go too far, you've ruined the slide. All right, now that being said, we're going to go to the next area. Well, I'm going to try to pull. Well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to do it. I'm going to disassemble the slide over here. Take off the end plate. Pull this back. Pull that out. We'll take all this out because you have to modify your firing pin. And the best way to do it is to use the stock, all the stock components, except for the back plate, which you're going to have to modify. So you can see how this back plate is all milled down, so it fits in the contour. Here's your milled out contour now. I'm a little thin in one area, but this fits in nicely. It goes right in just like so, and it fits in perfectly. This is cosmetic. People can nitpick, but you know, you're gonna get, sometimes you might get a little chatter. You're doing this by hand, but this is perfectly smooth. Trust me. It's, you know, if you painted it, you could hide it, but this is a stainless steel slide. I'm leaving it alone. It wasn't a factory finished job, but trust me, it works perfectly fine. And it's as smooth can be. So there you go. Once again, mill this area. You could see where that little stop used to be. And then you got to mill this area down. Let me see if I can give you a profile from the back. You got to have that nub in there. I mean, if you're going to do this, do it at your own risk. It was an experiment. It was I wanted to proof of concept, and I wanted to see if it could be done. I saw and heard rumors other people did it. They had Smith and Wessons or Glock and Wessons, and they did it. But here's the other modification right here. Your firing pin. Now I'm going to compare this to the other firing pin. Put this all aside. And I'm going to remove the firing pin from my completely stock, well, mostly stock, but this part is stock on my other SDVE. Let me pull this out, and I will show you what has to be changed. Take that. Okay, now I'm going to put this aside. Okay. Now these are both SDVE firing pins, but you can see a definite difference. You have to take, this is what your stock one's going to look like. Okay, this is what it's going to look like, or very similar when you're done. It's going to mimic the Glock profile. Okay, the height's going to stay the same for the most part. But the width in which this rides in the channel is pretty much the same. But this is what you're looking at. You can use a Glock firing pin, but when I did that, they were a little different. I don't know if it was lengthwise or what it was, but I got some light strikes. So what I did is I went to the Smith Wesson firing pin, I modified it, and then it functioned fine. So you can see that you have to machine, and you have to mimic a Glock style where it would, when it's coming over here, and it hooks to the back. When it rides over the cruciform and it hooks to the back, you have to mimic that profile. Otherwise, it's not going to interact with the Glock components in the lower. Okay. Now, of course, I hand-tuned this until it worked exactly the way I wanted it to. There's a lot of hand fitting involved. I mean, this isn't a project for the faint at heart, but that's the other part that has to be done. So you've got to review quickly, and I'm sorry if I'm not describing this well enough for people. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section. It's more for visual. You have to mill this area side by side again. Two areas, the two main areas of modification. This hump has to be flattened. Flattened, see? So you got to be very careful. And I'm going to show you the end mill in a second. This whole area has to be milled flat. You have to leave enough meat, whereas you can create a reset for your connector. That's right there beside the rear rail. That connector has to ride smoothly in this rail and then do its job when it passes over this hump. That's why your trigger reset is actually going to be a little further back with this pistol, because on an actual Glock slide, it's a little further up here. That's why you'll get a quicker trigger reset on the Glock. But when the slide's reciprocating in actual live firing, you won't even be able to know the difference. You really won't be able to know the difference. You won't be able to tell the difference at all. And you are going to get a great trigger reset once you, or feeling trigger rather, because you're working off of the actual mechanical workings of the Glock, which have a lot more leeway than those SD40VE series. Mill that out. Just give you a good look. Mill it flat. You see how that's all flattened out in there? And then you got your front part. Now, let's see if I can get a better shot. There you go. There's a pretty good comparison. What has to go? Of course, this part stays in the inside the breech. You don't mess with that, but that has to go. Otherwise, your slide will not reciprocate. And this part has to be modified. So you smooth this out until the slide will actually go on. Then you go from there and you hand fit. But you have to have good reset. So do not remove too much in this area. Remove just enough so you can get the slide on. It's almost down the middle. But you're going to have to like put the slide on, and you're going to have to find out where it's resisting, and then slowly mill from this side and go in. But this is going to have to all be milled flat, 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 flat. Okay. For comparison, I brought over my SWVE in 40 caliber. This is an earlier one. This was more close to an actual Glock, except for the trigger components, really. And there's one less step if you have an older one that you have to take, and this is more compatible, the upper, because this is actually a Glock extractor. I had to change out the extractor in this one because I was having extractor issues, but so a Glock extractor will actually fit Gen 3 in this. Anyhow, I want to show you, after I show clear, we're clear, but there's no solution for the rear sight, so don't get happy about that. But the Glock front sights will work, which is fine. Okay. Come on, get up. Okay, here we go. Put that aside. Same deal with the other frame. Same modification. Your main thing is going to be your ejector. Got to put a appropriate ejector in there. Okay, in this particular one, I'm going to show you the only advantage to going with an older one. This one's easier to do because you have to do one less step. Come on, baby, get out of there. This one's a little tight too. Okay, that one wanted to fight me a little bit, but that's okay. It was just little snugs. I haven't taken it apart in so long. Okay, you can see over in this one did not have that little stop that the SDVE had. I don't know why they made this difference, but the SDVE has this little bump, and the SWs didn't have this one, the earlier one. So if you are thinking about making one of these work, converting it over to work on a Glock frame, that's one less step you have to take. You only have to concentrate on this area right over here. The firing pin modification is the same. This modification is the same. Mill it flat. Make the hump. Another good thing is it just seemed that this one was an easier project because of that little bit of less machining. So you can see you've got your little hump for your reset right over here, for your trigger reset. And you do not have that little obstruction over here. So this one was closer to an actual actual Glock style slide. So that's one less thing you have to do. And like I said, your extractor, that's a Gen 3 extractor. I had a problem with extracting, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I couldn't find one anywhere. I even called Smith Wesson, and they didn't offer the part anymore for whatever reason. And they just said, oh, no, well, you know, we don't make that part anymore, so basically you're on your own. So I had to figure out what I could use, and lo and behold, was, you know, the Glock Gen 3 unit extractor fit right in there. So, I don't know. There's another look. There's this one, the SW, and there's the SD, side by side. They changed a few more parts, like your safety plunger over here. Firing pin block was changed over. This one looks more like a Glock Gen 3. I know that the firing pin blocks are not interchangeable. I didn't try interchanging them as far as... I know they won't interchange in these models, but I didn't try with the Glock because I know that the Glock will not fit in here. This is too large. So you're stuck with this. If you want to do... Like, if you wanted to round this out a little bit and smooth it out so it's smoother operation, that's what I did with this. I worked with what I had, and I was very satisfied with the outcome. So, Bailey 9x19, I hope I answered some of your questions. Threw this one together for you when we're going into 26 minutes right now. If you have any other questions, by all means, just ask me, and I will try to help you out. But there's your big differences. So if you're working with the the S40VE, which I think you are, that's what you're going to have to do. If you're working with the SW, this is what you're going to have to do, one less step. But the main thing is the same. You have to make sure your disconnector can slide and reset on that hump. So you have to take out the extra material and create that ledge. So when the frame and slide are reciprocating together, you get proper function. Anyway, I hope this answered some of your questions. Easy 1, 2, and then you got your stock one right there in the middle. 1, 2, 3. Take one more look. That way you guys can pause it if you want to. That's that one. And then here is the SW, the earlier slide. There's only one step you have to do on that one. Oh yeah, by the way, I will let you know that here is the end mill that I used. This is 3/16 end mill. You get a high quality, I think I spent about $25 for this end mill. You're going to need a good quality end mill. I actually used a modified drill press to do it. And when you get that in there, you're going to have to slowly go back and forth and take all this area out. It is it's not easy. This was all done by hand, but this area, and if you take too much, you just junk the slide. And that's about it. Another long video, but Bailey wanted the answers, so I try to answer the questions, or I think I provided him with the information that he wanted. Leave any other questions down in the comment section, and I will answer them as soon as I can, okay? Hope this helps. Thanks for watching. And Bailey, I'm pretty sure you're a subscriber. If you're not, subscribe now. All right. Like I said, hope this helps. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day. And if you already haven't, I hate to be redundant, like, subscribe, thumbs up, and share with somebody you think might get something out of this. Have a great day.